Yeah, I just have one issue. I talked about it in my opening statement, and this is the potential for fire with the lithium-ion batteries. So, Ms. McElroy, how are you all handling that in Maryland? And then I'll ask everybody else if they have some suggestions here.
I think there are a couple ways to answer that. Right now, I think local governments are in sort of a reactive position. I know they've taken measures to do, for example, site checks of their electronics that are stored on their collection sites at the end of each day, just to ensure that something hasn't, short-circuited to cause that fire. What I've heard is sometimes, or maybe more often at some sites than others, they'll leave for the day and the fire will start slowly, and then they'll see video footage of overnight fire that is spread from electronics. That's more of an incident on when it's sitting in a stored container, but I think the biggest issue is when these electronics are being put in the waste stream by residents, and they're being compacted by on the tipping floor when the trash truck unloads. So right now, they're mainly just having to react to that. They're told to have fire departments basically on call. Some sites are training their employees to use the fire extinguishers that are on site. Some are told to wait because of the potential chemical concerns, to wait for the actual fire department. So I think it's kind of all over the place with how people are reacting to this. I had another point, but it slipped my mind, so I'll end with that.
Well, Mr. Kochar, you said in your either your testimony or response that you have a different method for preventing the fire, because I guess water is not what you put on a lithium battery fire. Yeah. So how would you respond to that, and how do we eliminate that risk?
I think there's a couple of areas. I think particularly in e-waste, it's really hard because the batteries are embedded in the devices. I think of old Nokia phones, you could take the battery out. Can't do that anymore, right? It's waterproof almost in some ways usually. So that's the first step, and companies like Mr. Boswell's have to deal with that, and then we get the lithium-ion battery feed. Now, the way we shred is under immersion of a liquid. That's part of what we've patented, but it basically prevents fire. But again, if we know what we're getting, right, we're set up to handle this material, but in other cases they're not, and that's where the issue arises, is if you don't know, then you have the potential for fire.
Yeah. Mr. Boswell, do you have a response to the fire potential?
Yeah, I think the point he makes is valid, is that, companies in this industry that have had to deal with this problem, we're, making a lot of strides in doing this safely, investing in training. ISRI provides training on how to handle batteries safely. Our companies themselves, we make a focus on how our employees should handle them safely. The biggest issue is when they get into a stream other than a stream to an e-waste processor. Yeah. I think some of the education funds that were out there in infrastructure for recycling, it would be well served to help educate the public on the difference between the electronics recycling stream and a municipal recycling stream.
Right. Mr. Pellicane, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just really echo the sentiments of my colleague Craig here. As a nonprofit refurbisher, we follow all local ordinances and as well as industry best practices. But as Craig speaks to, the issue is, of course, when our employees that are trained, or employees like Hobby's organization that are trained, are handling those. And so really investing in that public awareness that Craig spoke to, and then also the infrastructure that Kitty spoke to be able to handle those things within municipalities.
Well, I'd just like to thank all of you. I'm going to admit, when I saw, when we had the topic of our hearing, I thought, is this going to be very interesting? And, it is very interesting because it really impacts everybody at every level, but, here in government, obviously, but in our garages, in our closets, and other places, and it's only going to get worse. And I think, the economic model has got to be there, and I like the idea of a lot more reuse rather than just, removing it and disposing of it, because that's never going to get any better either, and it's just going to accumulate. So any way we can be supportive, I'll take your suggestions. I think, Mr. Kochar, you lined out some really interesting ones, and then Mr. Boswell got into the trade issue, which sounds like an enormous issue and could be quite painful to fix as well. So anyway, I just want to thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming in.